Thank the distinguished permanent representative of St. Kitts and Nevis. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Vietnam.
Mr. President, my delegation would like to thank the Secretary General for his comprehensive report on this agenda item. I also wish to extend our warm welcome to His Excellency Bruno Rodriguez Parrilla, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Cuba. Vietnam aligns itself with the statements delivered by Uganda, Iraq, and Singapore on behalf of the Non-Aligned Movement, the Group of 77 in China, and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, respectively. These statements reaffirm the shared conviction of the overwhelming majority of UN membership that the economic, commercial, and financial embargo imposed against Cuba must be lifted fully, unconditionally, and without delay. Mr. President, more than 6 decades on, this unilateral embargo continues to stand in contradiction to the purposes and principles of the UN Charter and international law, including sovereign equality, non-interference in internal affairs, and freedom of international trade and navigation. The embargo has inflicted severe and prolonged hardship on the Cuban people. It violates the legitimate rights to development and undermines the very spirit of multilateralism and humanity that the United Nations represents. According to Cuba's most recent report to the United Nations, the embargo caused losses exceeding $7.5 billion between March 2024 and February 2025, a nearly 50% increase from the previous year. Behind these figures are the daily struggles of the ordinary people: limited access to medicines, food, and energy, the essential foundations for human dignity and progress. Mr. President, at the high-level general debate of the 80th session of the General Assembly, President Lương Cường of Vietnam reiterated our call for the complete lifting of all sanctions against Cuba and for the removal of Cuba from the so-called state sponsors of terrorism list. This reflects Vietnam's unwavering solidarity with Cuba and our belief that dialogue and engagement, not isolation, are the only viable path towards reconciliation and shared prosperity. Vietnam therefore joins the international community in once again calling for the end of this outdated and unjust policy and urges all states to refrain from applying or enforcing extraterritorial measures that contravene international law and the Charter of the United Nations. Vietnam's own experience testifies to the transformative power of dialogue and reconciliation. 30 years after the lifting of U.S. embargoes and the normalization of bilateral relations, Vietnam and the United States have become comprehensive strategic partners. The two countries now work closely across a wide range of areas, turning confrontation into cooperation and past enmity into partnership grounded in mutual respect and benefit. This transformation has brought tangible benefits to both peoples. Educational and cultural exchanges have deepened mutual understanding, two-way trade and investment have grown exponentially, and cooperation in science and technology has opened new opportunities for shared growth. This experience stands as living proof that when nations choose dialogue over division and respect over resentment, they can together build a future of trust and shared progress. Vietnam sincerely hopes that this same spirit of reconciliation and forward-looking approach will one day define relations between the United States and Cuba. We nevertheless remain concerned that recent policy developments appear to move in the opposite direction, with tighter restrictions and stricter enforcement of the embargo. Vietnam encourages a careful reassessment of these measures in a spirit of dialogue, humanitarian consideration, and respect for international law. Mr. President, the continuation of the embargo against Cuba is morally indefensible, legally untenable, and economically counterproductive. It serves no constructive purpose other than to prolong hardship and erode confidence in the values we collectively uphold. Vietnam therefore calls upon the General Assembly to once again adopt the resolution in consideration, not merely as an act of solidarity with Cuba, but as a reaffirmation of the UN Charter, the principles of international law, and the collective conscience of humanity. Vietnam will continue to stand firm in supporting Cuba's right to sovereignty, self-determination, and development, confident that the principle of justice, dialogue, and cooperation will ultimately prevail. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of Vietnam. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Malaysia.